Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me for episode 63 of Untold Evidence. Today, we're going back in time once more, and we're going to hang around Washington. In the summer of 1952, unidentified objects appeared on a radar over the capital of the United States. Not once, but 2 weekends in a row. Jets were scrambled over the White House, over the Capitol. Air traffic controllers watched the objects on their screens and could not explain what was going on. And it pushed the Air Force into holding the largest press conference it had ever given since the end of the Second World War. That's 8 years later. The official explanation came fast. The men who had watched the screens did not accept it. It was just before midnight on July the 19th, 1952. At Washington National Airport, an air traffic controller named Edward Nugent noticed 7 objects on his radar screen. They were in a sector where there was no known aircraft traffic. He called over his supervisor, Harry Barnes. Barnes looked at the screen and later said plainly that they behaved in a way no conventional aircraft could. The objects would drift slowly, then accelerate to speed Barnes estimated were far beyond anything in the service. This is a regular theme in the UFO dimensions. The returns were not on one screen alone. Radar at the National Airport, radar at nearby Andrews Air Force Base, and the tower radar all picked up unknowns on that night. And it was not only radar. Pilots in the air reported seeing the lights. People on the ground reported seeing the lights. An airline pilot named Casey Pierman reported bright objects that moved at extraordinary speed. Jet interceptors were eventually scrambled. By the time they arrived at the area, the objects had faded from the scopes. When the aircraft left to refuel, the objects returned. That pattern, gone when the jets came, back when they left, would repeat itself. 1 week later, on the night of July 26th, 1952, it happened again. And once more, the unknown returns appeared on radar at the National Airport. Once more, they were tracked at multiple radar facilities. And once more, jets were scrambled. On this second night, one of the intercepting pilots, Lieutenant William Patterson, reported that he was surrounded by the lights. He radioed for instructions, asking what he should do. And according to accounts of the night, there was a pause on the line before he received an answer. The lights then moved away. 2 consecutive weekends, multiple radar sets. Visual reports from the air and on the ground. The story was now front-page news across the country. Newspapers ran headlines about objects over the Capitol. The pressure on the Air Force to say something was quite clearly immense. On July the 29th, 1952, the Air Force responded. Major General John Samford, the Air Force Director of Intelligence, held a press conference at the Pentagon. It was the largest Air Force press conference since the Second World War. Samford's message was measured. He acknowledged that the Air Force received many reports it could not immediately explain, but he offered an explanation for the Washington radar returns. A temperature inversion is a real atmospheric condition. A layer of warm air sits above cooler air. Under the right conditions, that boundary can bend radar signal, causing returns from objects on the ground, cars, and buildings to appear on a scope as if they were airborne targets. Samford's position was that the Washington radar returns were most likely this effect, and that the visual sightings were misidentified stars or ordinary phenomena. For the Air Force, the case was effectively closed. For the men who had been in the radar rooms, it was not. So here's where the case becomes genuinely two-sided, and an honest account has to hold both halves. The radar operators pushed back on the inversion explanation. Harry Barnes, the senior controller, publicly disputed it. The operators argued they were experienced professionals who knew what temperature inversions looked like on a scope, and that what they had tracked did not behave like inversion artifacts. Inversion returns tend to be fuzzy and to behave in characteristic ways. The operators said that these returns were solid and moved with intent. Captain Edward Hupelt, who ran the Air Force's own US UFO investigation, Project Blue Book, was uneasy about how quickly the inversion explanation had been settled on. In his own later writings, he treated the Washington case as genuinely unresolved rather than cleanly explained. But the counter-narrative deserved its own fair hearing too. Temperature inversions were, in fact, present over Washington on those nights. Weather data confirmed the atmospheric conditions existed. Inversions' effects on radar are not a cover story. They are documented, well understood phenomenon, and they genuinely can produce convincing false targets. And the visual sightings in the Washington summer heat are exactly the conditions under which bright stars and the planets near the horizon are most often misjudged for moving objects. So the honest verdict is a split one. The official explanation was not invented out of nothing. It did rest on a real phenomenon. But it was reached very quickly under enormous public pressure, and the trained professionals closest to the screens never accepted that it fit what they saw. So what makes the 1952 Washington flap matter is not that it proves the objects were extraordinary, it is what it reveals about the machinery of explanation. An event happened, it was witnessed by credentialed professionals. It generated national headlines, and within days an explanation arrives that calms the public, that is based on something real, and that the actual eyewitnesses reject. All of these things happened at once. Temperature inversion, or something with intent. The radar operators spent the rest of their lives sure they knew which one it was. The Project Blue Book files on the Washington case are public. The link is in the description. Tell me in the comments who you believe and what you think. Project Blue Book was real. The case file is real. What goes on is, as ever with disclosure and UFO content, extremely hard to judge. For my personal reading, this is another one where the counter-narrative has some serious flaws. These trained professionals on the radar, just like the fighter pilots, are the best of the best. It is extremely difficult, to my understanding, to reach these levels without extreme technical proficiency. If you're on the radar or in the jet, you have earned that right. It doesn't just get spanned around to anyone who can fly a plane or read a radar. So I feel that these professionals have to be at least listened to, if not trusted. And it is not abnormal for the government to provide explanations that, while scientifically true, sometimes highlight the potential cover-up of what really happened. Now, at the minute, I have no major opinion either way. I think that it's a high chance that this was a UFO. But being over the city capital, being around the Pentagon, is that suspicious? Are extraterrestrials actively attacking the US government? I truly don't know. But as ever, tell me what you think. If we've misrepresented anything, if we've misled you, or if we've misinformed you, tell us your side of the story and let's get to the bottom of it together. We are all here to follow the evidence. Thank you very much for joining us on this one, and we will see you in the next episode.